Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 4 in the GroupM services series called Advantage, focused on the subject of how identity is evolving within addressable media and data-driven marketing. I'm Jon Thurlow, COO of GroupM Asia Pacific, and today we're going to be talking about the implications and some of the steps that we think will be necessary to navigate these changes. Before we get on to today's discussion, I'd like to briefly recap what we've heard in the earlier 3 episodes. We started with Justin Payton from Wunderman Thompson and an IAB board member, talking with Eric Corzoy of GroupM Services about privacy at a broader level. And some of the key takeouts were the changes have been coming for some time and address growing consumer need and legislative forces around data privacy and ethics. There will be a fragmentation, and it's unlikely we will ever have a single solution to the identity challenge with the removal of individual identifiers as they exist today. And thirdly, where the challenges occur, so there are opportunities. And we're working with partners to share data that respects all the rights of consumers and provide consulting services for brands to develop these data strategies. In the second part, we look more specifically at first-party data and how that is evolving. And we were joined by Trish Jordan from Salesforce, who has extensive experience in this space. The key takeouts were, in a world of change for third-party data, first-party data can be a more stable environment. The evolution from unknown data in DMPs to known data in CDPs, best practices in activation, and the need to build an approach for test and learn in this space. And then more recently in session 3, Chris Packman and Crystal Oliveri from GroupM talked with Tom Weaving of Trade Desk about the different approaches to how partnerships are developing in technical areas. So Google in early 2020 announced they would deprecate the cookies in order to put privacy first. And this led to the rise of the privacy sandbox. Earlier in 2021, Google announced the Flock Audience Initiative had achieved a 95% success rate, but that's not the only initiative, there are others. Trade Desk has a unified ID 2.0, which is an open and ubiquitous capability that addresses privacy, control, and transparency. And there are further solutions in play as well in the publisher ecosystem. And these include examples where publishers are working with privacy solutions such as InfoSum, BlockGraph, etc., to develop clean room strategies to manage data in a privacy compliant manner. So we've covered quite a lot in our first 3 parts already. And today I'm joined by Arshan Saha, CEO of Xaxis Asia Pacific, and Eunice Loh, Head of Precision for Wavemaker Asia Pacific. And we're going to be talking about some of the implications that we've heard about and how we can prepare for the future and guide our clients. So welcome to both of you. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourselves first, explain a little bit about what you do. Perhaps Eunice, you'd like to start?
Yeah, sure, happy to. So I'm the head of precision for Wavemaker for the APAC region. So precision pretty much covers a broad range of topics from audience sizes, data and tech, biddable media, and analytics as well as e-commerce. So very happy to be here. And this is really a topic that we are very interested into as well.
Great, thank you, Eunice. Arshan.
Hi, I'm Arshan. I'm the CEO of Xaxis Asia Pacific. Xaxis is the advanced programmatic arm of GroupM and WPP. And I manage the business across the 14 markets in Asia Pacific.
Great. So we couldn't really have 2 people better qualified to talk about some of these changes which we're going through. And Arshan, perhaps I could start with you. I think you've seen the first 3 episodes, and probably like me, you were sort of like very impressed by the depth of knowledge of the experts. How do you see these changes coming? What do you think are some of the key indicators that clients and agencies need to be looking for?
I think firstly, as everyone had summarized, this is a positive change and probably a change that everybody in the industry has been waiting for. Ultimately, this will support the ecosystem to be a lot more centric to consumers and the users itself. What does that mean? I think we will have an environment that will be a lot cleaner, perhaps a lot less ad fraud, more reliable signals, and perhaps even better data. In conjunction with that, that will allow for advertising to be more effective, perhaps driven by results that we all vie for, and with real KPIs that perhaps lead to outcomes. So I think, just summarizing it, it's a good positive change that's to come. But I guess if we go into a bit more detail of what is that impact of that change, I guess what will happen is there'll be a shift of focus back to contextual targeting, and AI will perhaps start playing a big role in enhancing this. What we will see very quickly happen is legacy methods of targeting, such as retargeting, will dwindle in terms of its importance, as without the ability to track people around the internet, this once preferred method will lose a lot of its backbone. We talked about context. Context will become king. And in the current advertising landscape, I think the primary consideration for a person receiving an ad is now shifting to what are they consuming, when are they consuming, and what their mindset is. We'll also see key indicators like keywords, time, location, and environmental factors to start shaping the new forms of targeting. So I think with this, then advertisers just need to be smarter about analyzing conditions around consumption of content, and also consider signals above and beyond the user. To that point, I think, as we talk about context, I think context and formats will also come together. So creative will start playing a big role in the future as well. And I think we'll touch in a bit more detail perhaps later. But I think one of the perhaps, one thing that I should definitely touch on for what is to come, and I think it's also probably the primary part of why we've come to this equation, is perhaps the focus of exchange, the focus on the exchange of value between consumers for their data in order to make advertising work better. And that includes our clients as well. And very simply, this is by giving individuals more transparency, notice, and choice when it comes to their data and their preference of usage of their data as well. I think, and hopefully that summarizes. Where do we go, John?
Great, thanks, Arshan. That was really good. Eunice, turning to you, we've heard from the subject matter experts over the past couple of weeks, both internally and at our sister WPP companies and partners. But I think the voice that we really need to listen to is the one of the brand. So could you share some insight on how you think clients are thinking about this space with you, and what do they expect and need from us?
Yeah, for sure. So we've had a lot of clients engaging us on this topic. They're really just trying to make sense of the situation. They're not very sure what the implications are. And essentially what we need to do is really to focus on education and understanding. We can't completely future-proof the future, but obviously we can kind of help them be prepared for it, to start anticipating the change, to start adjusting the strategies. So step one, definitely to educate. Step two is to audit, just to understand, what are the exposure that they have right now, what are the types of things that they need to change, and also to kind of start to plan. Third of all is actually to look and test and learn. There are a bunch of products out there. More and more publishers and vendors are going to come to you to test products. So it's really important for you to guide them and work with them to see which are the more appropriate ones to look into. Another thing that clients are also coming to us a lot about is in terms of data building. So now that with the diminishing use of, say, third-party data, the imperative to start building their first-party and also looking at second-party data exchange is becoming more important. So when we look at first-party, in terms of data generation, collection, cataloging, harmonizing, there are a lot of stuff that they need to do, and a lot of stuff that they need us to really guide them on. Brands are also looking to start digitalizing their offline data. So traditionally in the past, they have a lot of in-store retail data, loyalty card data, redemption data. What do they do with that? What form of tech and infrastructure that they need to do to kind of start to make sense of it? And I think once all this kind of hygiene infrastructure mechanism is in place, then the very exciting thing would start to happen, which is to look at insight discovery and audience segmentation. We can look at how do we improve communication, how do we look at activation, and all these are actually a lot of interesting opportunities that right now we may not have been thinking about because of the lack of first-party data to start off with. So that's also really interesting. I think last but not least, they're also looking towards groups and agencies for tech consulting features and functionalities. So this is really not a new area. In the past, we've guided our clients through the advent of programmatic, through the usage of ad servers and ad verification and all that. So clients definitely are looking towards us to kind of help them navigate this. I think what's important is also for us to just be their guide and be their partner, to be agnostic in the journey, just so that we can really give them the best solution that is more suitable for their brand.
Great, that's really interesting, Eunice. So at its heart, it's really about continuing the evolution of being a trusted advisor, I guess.
Yep, for sure.
So, one thing that struck me as you were talking was some of these skill sets, as you say, are, an evolution of the ones which we already have within our teams, things such as education on DSPs or ad servers. But I guess what I'd like to ask yourself and Arshan is, there are clearly new skill sets emerging. And how do you, as business leaders, how do you see that impacting, or how do you see that shaping the way that your teams are going to be evolving over the coming years with these new skill sets required?
Again, I think it all starts with the client ultimately, right? And being able to have a consultancy-based thought process in order to understand what a client's true needs are. So that consultancy-based or consultancy-led approach needs to be very strong. I think that's the first step. Within the teams itself, I think everyone has to acknowledge that we are coming into a space that's constantly evolving, changing. And with that, then we all need to have the curiosity to learn and develop new skill sets. And these skill sets will be both in the form of data enhancement skills, as well as broadening out into perhaps media creativity with context, as I mentioned, coming back to the foray. So if you look at it, the majority of our people need to have depth and skills, or translate a lot of their learning into aspects such as cloud infrastructure, data science, visualization, and the application of AI. I think these are going to be critical skill sets that all of us will need to have. And lastly, I think one is perhaps having the right skill sets, but I think secondly, it's also having the right attitude. And I think as we enter this sort of unknown world where there is no best laid plans, being brave to test, learn, and fail quickly is going to be very, very critical and core to success.
Yep, I agree with a lot of what Arshan is saying. I think that definitely in this era, more and more we're going to start looking at things like modeling and data science, because you're going to get a lot of partial data, which also gives rise to a lot of need for more predictive and modeling related work. We also need to start looking at more data and tech translators, because there are a lot of jargons going on. We need to really translate it into a manner that clients can understand and to put into action. On top of that, there are also creativity that's involved as well, and this I'm not really talking about say the pure creative development kind of thing, but really looking at ideas, content ideas, new mechanic to engage the consumer in a respectful and compliant way. Just now Arshan talked about value exchange. What are some of the different mechanic we can look at to engage the consumer, just so that they can really lean in and get a value from engaging with the brand. The soft skill part I really like as well, on what Arshan was talking about in terms of the mindset. More and more, there's going to be more test and learn. We need to have the appetite for it. We may or may not find the answers or the results that we want or we prefer as well. So we need to kind of be open to opportunities and situations that may arise. I think within GroupM as well, there is these there's this future of identity culture that's being formed, and essentially what happens is across the globe actually, people are leaning in to test the different solutions that's put out. And I think particularly to everybody on this call, really, the culture is just there to guide you, but the truth is we can't test without clients, and everybody here, it's the first point of contact with the clients to engage with them. So we do need everybody to lean in to reskill and to kind of reframe our mindset around this new change that's coming.
Yeah, I could certainly see that as being really important. Changing tack slightly and thinking less from an internal perspective and perhaps moving more to the market side. Arshan, I think one of the things that struck me as we were listening to the earlier session was with the fragmentation that's going to be taking place as we move from individual identifiers and how they evolve. Do you have any perspective, even if it's in the early stage yet, on how this may impact some of the smaller publishers and potentially what that would look like in terms of their ability to monetize audiences?
Sure. I mean, I think to Eunice's point and what I had sort of touched on earlier as well, I think the first key aspect for sort of, a publisher within the ecosystem is making sure that they're offering individuals a choice that will help them to cultivate a meaningful relationship and dialogue. This is, with your readers as such. And this has to be rooted in trust. And what I mean by that is that collection of data, that identifier needs to be trusted. I think that's the first key point. Once we've done that, then I think we will start seeing a lot of data collaboration. And this is where you'll see the multitude of publishers probably coming up to form consortiums of such, whereby then there is opportunity for co-ops on sharing data in order to derive a unified ID that could be a lot more scaled and can also be activated with that defined scale that we will need as well, and will justify for brands to move their budgets their way at the same time. So I think what the challenges that we have at the moment is, as much as we've talked about publishers being able to collect data, come together, collaborate, create a unified ID and make that applicable, I think what we've not probably tackled is that rooted trust of making sure as that data gets collected and it gets passed on the entire equation of the value chain, that a particular user knows what or where the data usage is going to lie. So I think in the new world that we move to, these aspects cannot be gray. It's got to be clear, and a publisher's got to make it very clear. If that trust is broken, I think you lose a reader as well.
Yeah. And I think that reinforces something else as well, which is, as GroupM, obviously, in terms of our own standards, we would obviously require and expect the publishers to be able to verify their supply integrity. And that's something which is going to get more and more important moving forward, that verification process, to ensure that we're supplying audiences to clients which are both compliant and valuable. So in terms of that then, Eunice, that sort of leads us on to some of the broader aspects about driving leadership in this space, and how we're going to navigate the changes as an organization for clients. So as an agency leader, do you see the evolution of Wavemaker and its ability to navigate these changes as becoming more integral to the way that clients are going to operate with data and with technology?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I think, to be change agents, we also need to adapt and adjust our mindsets. A lot of the things that we are currently doing, in fact, we can really double down and to build more on it. We can, get more creative. We can maximize, the current practices that we're doing. Just now Arshan spoke about trust between publishers, but there's also the element of trust between the consumer. So, to get them to share their data, to agree to share their data, we need to make sure, have creative way to engage them, be it in entertainment, be it in utility, all this, making them comfortable to be able to exchange their data with us. And on top of that, there are also existing work that's been done that I think we can definitely do more of. There are things like loyalty programs in terms of mechanics, redemption mechanic, for instance. The social platforms are already coming out with so many bunch of new formats that we can lean into. There are things like gamification that we do for some of our clients like OCBC and Chevron, augmented reality for L'Oreal and Chanel. So all these areas, I think, where it is known to be a little bit of a new innovation that's happening in the past, people would need to start looking at it more seriously to think about how can we adapt it to be more at scale, just so that our consumers can really lean into the brand. That's one area that we need to look into. Other areas is in terms of drawing inspiration from other markets, for instance China. I found them really interesting. They're actually pioneering in the way of working well with ecosystems. They're very smart at maximizing available resources within the ecosystem to make things work for them. So if you look at our current context within the big players, are we really connecting the dots? Are we maximizing all the available signals that we have? So for instance, if you look at Google, they have a huge suite of products. There is, analytic services, advertising platforms, creative elements, commerce features. How best are we maximizing all of them just to really lean in and do a more holistic way of communication and seamless experience for the consumer? And I think last but not least, we also need to think about our current practices just to make it more adaptable and more relevant. So to cite an example, right, which is starting to be discussed, the example of say DCO, which is dynamic creative optimization. So the whole essence of DCO is about personalized creative. Then in this day and age, people may start dismissing it to say that, oh, due to the lack of cookie data, there's no longer the ability to target a single user. But if you think about it, fundamentally pivoting from what we know of DCO is really about personalizing a moment. So essentially, you can still do the same thing. You can still serve the right content in the right context. It's just that instead of a single audience, you would need to start thinking of it in a cohort standpoint. Or now with the more enriched first-party data that people are starting to use, we can start to strengthen DCO in that feature as well. So I think all these elements in play, be it our mindset, be it our ability to adapt to changes and to really lean in on some of the big players as well, is something that we can really start looking into and work with our clients on.
Great, sounds really exciting. So with that sort of forward-looking perspective from the agency side, I guess one of the obvious questions then for you, Arshan, would be, Xaxis has really been so successful over the past decade. I mean, it's pioneered so many areas of programmatic. What do you think these changes are going to mean for Xaxis, and how is Xaxis going to evolve, do you think, with these new sort of dynamics at play?
I think firstly, we've always been at the forefront of data and technology, so this is not something new for us. And again, we've been working through this over the course of the last couple of years with foresight that it was coming. I think first, on the other hand, I think it's also our responsibility, because we've been at the forefront, to continuously provide education and inform clients of what can they do in this space. So let it be the intricacies of collecting, storing, and managing first-party data, for example, or creating unique advantages for them in programmatic. All of this is going to be critical. So if I was to look at it again, what are the focal areas for us? I think we firstly need to educate the ecosystem and our clients. I think that's going to be really, really critical. Secondly, I think as things evolve, then a client's digital marketing focus will also change and evolve. So I think we need to spend a lot of time understanding and talking to clients on the concerns that they're facing, what are they doing, and what they want to do in the future. How do they want to use their first-party data? I think that's going to be critical. That's more from a client stand. On a larger ecosystem stand, to what we spoke about, unified IDs, for example, we need to be working closely with publishers and acknowledging and promoting alliances, so we've got scaled ability in order to target in a new spectrum. And secondly, be working with the largest technology providers or tech partners, let it be the likes of Google or Salesforce, in order to make sure that we bring together or integrate our best technology, let it be in the form of AI and machine learning optimization using Copilot, or in terms of the utilization and activation of audience using the GroupM's Bridge, for example. And lastly, then, I think it's how do we continue to differentiate ourselves and continue to plan for the future as well. And that means continued investment in data and tech. And that means, let it be in first-party data, identity resolution that can be deployed in a cloud-led architecture, or AI-led optimization that allows us to use unified IDs to make decisions a lot quicker. This will be key. So I think if we look at it, I think it's education, understanding clients, collaboration, and investment. These are going to be the 4 components. But I think just before I leave this off, I think we can bring these 4 elements together. But I think one thing that we've probably not spoken about and is also going to be critical is the blend of media and creative. I think the blend of media and creative coming closer together to drive effectiveness and efficiency is more important than ever as we come into this new world that we move into.
That's a really good summary, Arshan, and that's something that Justin, I think, talked about at the very beginning of our sessions. How the creative side and the media side are coming back closer together, and the importance of it. So that's a very nice way to bring that together. So one of the areas, Eunice and Arshan, that I think a lot of people will be interested about is how do we think these changes are going to make advertising better in the future for people? Do you have any perspectives on that?
Yeah. So I guess like the fact of the matter is, consumers' trust is diminishing. People are choosing to opt out. They're using ad blocker. All these are testament to them really wanting their more privacy. And I guess as an industry, we really do need to do better to earn their trust so that they're more willing to give their data in a value that they are happy with. So when they receive a communication from a brand or receive a targeting from a brand, they're not surprised to be seeing it. They don't feel creeped out that they're being followed. And actually, that's actually good for the consumer and good for the industry. And we've also seen best practices and case studies where when we start to really orchestrate the first party data, well, be it the EDMs, the SMS, the in-store engagement, all the way to the online communication from owned to paid. Actually, this more seamless way of communicating does get us better results. So all in all, it does help, and it's good that the industry is moving towards this direction because it's actually for the betterment of everybody, both brand and consumers.
Right.
I guess as Eunice talked about a little bit more on the data component, I guess the data component is definitely the first part. But as we sort of move upon the data component, I think the promise of advertising has always been, of making it work better, has always been on the notion of the right ad to the right person at the right time with relevance and with context as well. And in order to obviously fulfill that, then I think the part that is missing is to what I iterated to earlier, where media and creative have to come closer together. The more we can bring media and creative together, especially through things like programmatic, the better our advantage and the better receptiveness we will get from the end user as well. I think there's still a fair bit of work that needs to be done on both ends. On the media side, I think using elements such as semantics, for example, to cross-reference contextual data against first-party data can help us to build more defined content interests and create segments on that relevance. And secondly, I think on the creative part, then creative needs to start catching up in terms of thoughtfulness and also being able to cut across different channels, not just on display or video, but moving down the path of social and commerce as well, making the journey and conversation a lot more defined by synergies.
Great. Thanks, Arshan. And what a great way to wrap this up. Over the past 4 weeks, we've discussed a lot about identity and its evolution. And I think the key takeout to me is that the change that's coming is really not a bad thing. The evolution of identity will bring advantages for both clients and brands and make advertising better ultimately for everybody. So in the past 4 weeks, we've really talked about many things. We talked about the need for clients to get their first-party data strategies in place and evolved. We've talked about the significance of having deep partnerships across the industry, both from a media and a technical side. We heard about the role of test and learns in this new space and how that's going to become increasingly important. Arshan's talked obviously about the creative and media coming together and how that's going to be a force of change for positivity in the future. And then Eunice talked about skill sets and that sort of the need for the agile mind as we move forward into the new space. So a lot to think about, but all in a positive way, I think. This is the end of the show now. So we hope you've enjoyed watching this series as much as we have in making it. Thank you to all of our presenters that have made this possible, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you.